Hey there, welcome to the Fire Rescue Wellness Podcast. It's AZ, and at least for the time being, I am not going to put episode numbers on my intro because I am recording these way far in advance, and sometimes recording schedules get messed up, and I have to make changes, and then Jeremiah has to do stuff over. So just welcome to the podcast for right now. Also, quick announcement. Do not forget to sign up for 7-Minute Science. It is going to be held June 24th of this year at 6 p.m. Central Time. Yes, there will be a recording, but it's going to be so much better if you attend live. So link to register is in the show notes. Today's guest is none other than my friend, Vanessa. Vanessa is the Health and Wellness Coordinator at the Pflugerville Fire Department. She's been on the podcast before. We've done a ton of stuff together. I literally just sent her kids a box of marathon medals. Yeah. But today's conversation was fantastic. We kind of caught up with what Vanessa's been doing since we first spoke to her in January of 2023, like 18 months ago. And she's got some exciting stuff going on. She started a work group. So she is training some of the firefighters to be her right and left hand. It's super exciting, especially since we just spoke with her chief a couple of weeks ago. So I hope you enjoy this episode. As always, give it a like, give the podcast a follow, write me a rating. And for the love of God, share the podcast with someone who needs the information. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining me on the Fire Rescue Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, AZ. I find the research and resources and then provide the fire service with the so what, now what, to ensure the health and well-being of every member of our profession. Together, let's thrive.
Oh my God, everyone. Number one, my allergies are kicking my ass. So sorry about that. And number two, I am here for round 2 with Queen Vanessa. Vanessa, say hello to the listeners.
Hello, listeners.
OMG, I'm so excited to have you back. So if you've been with the podcast for a while, you know that I had Vanessa on. It was like almost 18 months ago now, though.
Oh, was it? Oh, it was a long time ago.
January of 23.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So a lot of stuff has happened in your department, in your life since then. But first, I have a really important question for you because you are like on everybody on Instagram every day about, have you worked out? Are you working out later? Are you taking a scheduled rest break? Or like you're having trouble with motivation? So my question for you is, which one are you today?
Oh, I already worked out. Yeah.
Me too.
Nice, easy 45-minute zone 2 on the bike. I wasn't going to work out today, but then I was up early enough. And so I was at work early. And I was like, well, if I don't move around now, I definitely won't later today. And in theory, it was going to be a scheduled rest day, but I'm like, maybe I'll be tired tomorrow. So we'll just take advantage today.
I love it. That's amazing. So if you're not following Firefighter Strength Coach on Instagram, go follow Vanessa, and you too can get harassed every day about whether you worked out or not.
You know, I've been I feel like I get into bouts of consistency on Instagram, just like everybody does in terms of life. And I'll like ask the poll every single day for like a month. And then I'll like have one day where I forgot and I'm like, nah, fuck it.
Forget it. I'm not doing it.
Not doing it. And then I started posting them up again. And I've been getting so many messages of like, oh, and thank God, like, I'm so glad that they're back. And I'm like, okay, fine. I will like make a little alarm on my phone to remember to do that.
Well, it's like my walk every damn day. I walk every damn day, but I haven't been remembering to post every damn day about my walk every damn day. But really, people do reach out and they're like, hey, I walked today too. So, I mean, basically what you can say, Vanessa, is that we're like important influencers.
Yeah, very, very much so. My bank account does not reflect the influencer status that most seem to have.
Yeah, mine either. And so in your personal life, since we last spoke, you also finished your house and moved into your house. How exciting. Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any like big things you're like super happy with, or things like, oh, I wish I wouldn't have done it quite that way, or not enough time yet?
No, there's like little things, but it's little things I wouldn't have known, like, unless I already lived in the house that I live in. And they're so minute that like I wouldn't go back and try and change them. But it's awesome. We live a little bit out in the country, and
Beautiful.
so it's really nice to kind of get away from the hustle and bustle and really essentially down regulate your nervous system. I had some friends come over like a week ago. They work for the department, and they're like, does your blood pressure just drop when you get home? I said, yes, until I hear my children screaming, mama, because they're crying because somebody hit somebody and the dog, took their snack and all the things, and then it goes right back up. But for a brief moment there, when I just get to be in the silence, my blood pressure goes down tremendously. So it's been really nice.
Well, I too am moving to kind of the country, and without knowing it, I'm only going to be about 4 miles from my advisor, Jay Doss, which is awesome. But I have been warned publicly, in fact, that I shouldn't stop over without notice because he may be walking around the yard in shorts and cowboy boots. So,
I mean, I feel like that's a solid outfit. So if anything, you go join him in some shorts and cowboy boots. I thought you were going to say walking around naked or something like that. And I was
no.
Okay.
No, shorts and cowboy boots. And honestly, like this is a match made in heaven, because I texted him this morning. I'm like, hey, can you talk for a few minutes? Or are you busy walking around in shorts and cowboy boots and chasing chickens? And he actually had been walking around in, he said his boxers, but whatever. Anyway, okay. So now we're caught up on kind of the personal life. What I really, really, really wanted to talk to you about is what's new in Pflugerville since we talked last time. And since we talked last time, I've had Jacob Moda, who's a research collaborator. I've had the good dudes from Frontline Mobile Health. I've had your chief. So a lot of Pflugerville people since we spoke last, but I know you have some exciting things going on right now. So I'm going to turn the mic over to you.
So, I mean, it's hard to think back 18 months ago. We've we've graduated one, if not two, cadet academy classes since then. So a bunch of civilians coming in and going through the 7-month academy. We've probably graduated at least one recruit class, which is what we call like people who are already certified coming in, either with experience outside of the academy or not, but already have their certifications. I have built out a health and wellness work group team to about 13 people. So I've hosted 2 trainings internally to grow that out some. We've published a couple studies with Dr. Moda in the lab over there. We've definitely done physicals since then. So I've been in constant contact with Mike, not so much for us anymore since he's up north a little bit. And yeah, I found out that actually as of yesterday, since I listened to your podcast with Chief Perkins, I stopped by his office and found out that he was a Ted Lasso fan because he has a Believe sticker hung on his door. So
really?
Yeah, those are the things I've been doing and finding out since last time we chatted.
So I really, really, really want to talk to you about your work group. So that's, I think, what we'll spend the bulk of time on today. So some departments choose to have peer fitness trainers, and then some departments choose to do the right thing and have an outside professional. But sometimes that outside professional needs extra sets of hands and eyes and toes and fingers. And that's what you're doing, correct? You are building your own team of eyes and hands, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So, if anybody listened to Chief Perkins' episode, we've over doubled in size in the last 4 years. I've been here for, this month will be 8 years.
Yay.
And so it's changed a lot since then, but something that I got to do back then, which I don't get to do now, just due to time constraints and different programs we have running, is regular weekly workouts with every station, every shift. We had 4 stations back then, 75 personnel. now we're over 220 personnel in 8 stations. And so like actually impossible to do in a single day for a single person, right? On top of like all of the other kind of programs that have evolved over the years. And so my goal has always been to create some depth in our program. And so I never want it to be just me. Just like the entire fire department doesn't hinge on one firefighter showing up to work, right? Like maybe it does in the smallest town ever and there's one single volunteer. But when we're talking about, full-on departments, multiple stations, multiple shifts, all of the things, like if one person doesn't show up to work, the trucks still roll out of the bays, right? Calls still come in, so on and so forth. Now, by no means is what I do the same as responding to the general public and their needs, but I don't want it to be to where, hey, Vanessa's not here today, or, this month, like when I took maternity leaves, essentially a lot of things just went on pause. And that shouldn't be the case, in the sense that like the machine should still run without me necessarily being there. And so my goal has always been to kind of grow my group, and not to mention, as we continue to grow, I'm not going to be the person who, whose messages are best received by more people. Like not everybody's cup of tea, and that's perfectly fine. As we get more people, I will be less and less people's cup of tea, right? And so the more people we have on our team that can, talk to other people, coach other people, relate to them in ways that I cannot, is always helpful.
And so you obviously had to do kind of like an internal search for these people to be in your work group. And so tell me how you did that and kind of the characteristics and qualifications that you were looking for.
And so it was a very formal, informal way of going about it. There was a formal process in terms of there was a very short application to be filled out. And then informal, in that like I already had some people in mind and kind of just like poked the bear until they either said yes or no. And I had no requirement for any certifications to come into the group. And my major requirement was a recognition on their part and a way of them like verbally expressing this, of whether they realized how they like to train is not the best way to train. And that's important to me because I don't think, and I know there's not one way to skin a cat, right? There's not one form of exercise that is the single best variation, methodology, progression, so on and so forth for every firefighter out there. Are there themes? Yes. Are there principles? Yes. Are there like, principles of physiology that apply to every single person? Yes. But how you go about accomplishing them can be different. And so it was very important to me that I had the right kind of people versus the people who knew the right things. Because if you're the right kind of people, I can teach you almost anything, as long as we give it time and there's some commitment on your part. And so choosing people who weren't in it for the benefit of themselves, not to say they weren't like excited to learn and like progress, but they weren't in the training to be like, hey, I want to get better at fitness, and so I'm going to come to this training in hopes that you're going to hold me to that. It was more about, are you willing and caring enough to do this for other people? Like recognizing that you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be the fittest person in the room. Do you have to live by your principles of regularly working out, so on and so forth? Yes. You don't have to be the fastest person, the person with the least body fat percentage, the strongest person, so on and so forth. But you do have to care enough to want to share this message with others in a way that connects with them versus in a way that you want to explain it.
So for example, I could myself be a marathon, ultra marathon, whatever. I 100% believe that running is the way to fitness. But as long as I recognize that that is not everyone's way to fitness, I might be an okay candidate for your work group.
Yes.
Okay. Nice. And so initially, when you chose these people, I believe you told me how many it was, and I already forgot.
And my first training had 10 people in it. And then this next one had 3 people in it. It was much smaller.
Okay. So you have almost
13.
15 people.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about what that training looked like and how long did it last?
So it was a 2-day course, and it was a lot of, I say lecture, but lecture discussion, I think, is a more appropriate description of it, that went over like basic exercise physiology. We harped on, and that was kind of minute. We spent a ton of time on movement patterns. We went over the development of all of the benchmarks that we do as a department. Not only what they are, because they know what they are, because they do them every single year, but specifically how they were created and what is it that they're looking at and how does that apply. We went over kind of the state of the general population in terms of health and performance metrics, the state of the Gen Pop, the fire service without any kind of health and wellness program, average fire service with health and wellness program according to the literature, and then where we stand. What else did we do? And then we spent some time educating on nutrition, on sleep, kind of hitting the 5 pillars that I talk about often. In some, we spent a ton of time on, like movement patterns, we really spent the most of the time on. And then after that, probably the science behind conditioning and like VO2 max, because that's something that we stress here. And we had just kind of gotten off our physicals where everybody was like talked to about their VO2 max. And so to help answer those questions, yeah. So that's what and then we moved some. In my head, I wish it were 3 days. And like moving forward, potentially I'm going to try and do that, but it's a little difficult to get that many people off of a shift, right? And pay for training and all the things. But ideally it'd be 3 days, because I would like to spend more time moving and going through like actual workout sessions and having them lead them. Like if we could do 2 30-minute sessions a day and have different people lead them, I think that would be extremely helpful, kind of setting them up for success, that I didn't do this last time around.
Ooh, I love that. Expanding the time and more moving. That's amazing. Tell me, because some of the listeners right now are going, movement patterns. What does Vanessa mean by that? So lay that out for us.
So movement patterns is what, like, the general term I use to describe like how our body moves during exercise. So there's kind of some main ones, and you've probably heard them in different ways, shapes, or form, like pushes, pulls. I specifically use a hinge like the verbiage I use is a hinge pattern. So deadlift, RDL, things like that, where you're pushing your butt back. A squat pattern where you're bending at the knees in some way, shape, or form is in form of a squat. Horizontal, I can't speak. Horizontal push and pulls, think like bench press, push-ups, or inverted rows, reverse flies, things like that. Vertical push and pull, pull-ups, presses, and these are all like, there's a million variations within these, right? Pillar strength or pillared position, think of like carrying loads, or just standing, right? Standing, plank, those sorts of things where I'm keeping my body in a straight position. Locomotion, crawling, walking, running. And then I kind of just throw all of rotation / flexion into one. So bending sideways, bending over, and the resisting of those movements, I kind of throw into one when I'm teaching it.
And I love how you break that down, because if you ask someone to learn an exercise, they learned an exercise. But if you teach them patterns, then they can recognize different exercises to draw into it.
Yes.
I think that's a great way to teach it.
And that's one of the things that I'm really passionate about when it comes to teaching. When Because I think it sets you up for the most success, especially in the model of we don't abide by one specific training dogma. We use training principles, movement principles, so on and so forth. And so with that in mind, like if I'm talking to somebody who is a runner, right? I'm talking to you, you run these marathons. I can talk about movement and running and the progression of running and training and how why your knee hurts because of what your hip's doing and your ankle's doing. The same way I could talk to somebody about why their knee is hurting because they're a power lifter and their squat pattern is slightly different, right? I don't have to be an expert in that, model of training. I don't have to be a marathon runner to know how to look at running and what that looks like. I don't have to be a competitive power lifter to look at a squat and know what's happening. Just like I don't need to be any of those things to watch someone pick something up off the ground like a med bag and know how their movement might be faulting them if they're having some aches and pains in different places.
So you are under the philosophy of the sort of give a man or woman a fish rather than teach them to fish. I'm sorry. You're under the philosophy of teaching them to fish rather than giving them a fish.
Yes, 100%.
Now who is losing their mind? It's me. Hello, it me. Also, listeners, I need to make it super clear. I used an example of running and marathon running and ultra marathon running. That is not me. Big girl is
I wasn't going to point it out and be like, you don't run.
Big girl is not doing running anymore. Okay. Last marathon was like in 2003. Yes.
Bucket list item?
No.
Or did you do a couple?
Oh no, I did 5 in a row because I thought I was like a runner.
Gosh, you're a psychopath.
I know. I was a psychopath. Like, this girl is not a runner.
I did one and done. I was like doing one for a bucket list item, and then you couldn't pay me to run a marathon. I mean, maybe you could. We talked about our bank accounts. You could pay me to run a marathon, but it would need to be a notable amount.
Dude, I have 5 medals right now down. I'm not even kidding. I'll send you a picture after we get done. They're sitting on the floor by my exit door, and I'm trying to figure out, do I throw these away? Do I donate them to, what do I do with 5 medals? I don't even know.
When you encounter young children, like if you have nieces and nephews or just like, like niece and nephew in quotation marks in terms of family friends, you give them a medal. They love them. My kids love medals.
Okay. You're going to get 5 medals in the mail.
Dude, my boys will be so excited. They will be pumped. They'll wear them around like freaking wrestlers.
Oh, see? Yeah. This is why we have conversations, because we figure out what to do with our marathon medals. Yeah. Jeepers creepers. Okay. So your first wave of these work group people, the 10 of them, how long ago was that?
I think I held it sometime last June.
Maybe. Okay, so we're coming up on a year.
So I guess, about a year ago.
Okay.
Would be my guess.
And then how was the ease of implementation? Were there some like real hard high bumps, or was it pretty smooth? Any lessons learned?
I mean, there's always lessons learned for sure. Essentially, the way I had them start, there's only one who had previous coaching experience, and so was a personal trainer before becoming a firefighter, and did some group fitness. The majority of the rest of them were involved in some kind of like sports, either in the high school, collegiate, or professional realm. And then a couple of people were just like into fitness and want to share that with people. And so I started first only kind of having them do 2 things. One was benchmark testing. And so they would help me with all of our fitness benchmarks that we do. They would be regular faces that people see when we do our fitness benchmarks. And then 2, in academy workouts. And so I always start them there first, particularly if they don't have previous experience coaching, because an academy setting is a much easier place to learn. Everybody is doing, for the most part, the exact same thing in terms of exercise selection. And they are scared still, and so they listen to you pretty easily. And if not, they get yelled at, right? And so it's an easy place to kind of start to dip your toes into coaching, versus now some of them, and still not all of them, because not all of them are comfortable doing this. And I don't want to necessarily push them to that, because then it's not a win for really anybody, right? But now they're making rotations to the stations, and kind of splitting the load with me a little bit there. But that's a much harder thing to do in terms of, especially, sorry, I'm like talking in circles, but in terms of working with not only a group who has a lot more variety in terms of training age and injury history and all these sorts of things. Like, most people coming into an academy are generally in their mid to high 20s, right? We have a couple people younger than that, a few people older than that. For the most part, they're healthy. They might have a few aches and pains, but they passed all of the assessments to be able to come in. So we know they're physically able to run, they're physically able to do X, Y, and Z, right? Whereas even with all of our fitness assessments that we have, so people have capabilities, right? But they have totally different injury history profiles, and things that they need, things that they like versus dislike, and a lot more opinions. And then on top of that, like, I'm an outsider coming in versus the majority of my people are all firefighters. I have one lieutenant who is part of the group, but in that sense, like, you're also dealing with differences and change of command and learning how to navigate that, which for the most part, thankfully, here is very, very well received, in terms of, I don't have people being very upset that a firefighter is coming in to, quote unquote, tell them how to work out, because I think of the history and things that we've done serve like to kind of ease that a little bit. But it's still like, that's still a hard thing to navigate. And so I feel like I've talked for 5 minutes and hopefully answered a question.
No, you absolutely did. And okay, we can both, like, you and I have conversations about this all the time. And you and I can both, and Chief Perkins and, Chief Baker from South Metro, and Chief Brian Edmondson from Fairfax, we can all admit two things. Two things can be true at the same time. Mm-hmm. Having an outside credentialed, qualified professional is the best option. That is true. And it can also be true that a department isn't in a position to do that. So two things can be true. So you and I both know that having a Vanessa, having an Annette, having a Megan, having whomever at a fire department is a better option than, just having pure fitness trainers sort of left to their own devices. Mm-hmm. But I want to, if we can, collectively give some good suggestions for those departments that feel like we cannot hire a dietitian. We cannot hire a strength coach, ATPT, whatever, fill in the blank. So absent someone to lead and monitor those peer trainers, can you give some suggestions for best practices? So say they're credentialed through the IAFF or NSCA, and they're kind of like, now what? What do you think, friend?
So I would model it kind of the way we do our other work groups here. And just like kind of my work group is modeled, it would just technically be without me, right? And so let's say that I wasn't who I am, the outsider. Let's say that I was a firefighter who had some form of credential, whether or not, like you said, it's like a pure fitness trainer through the IAFF, or I have my PT through somewhere, or I'm a CSCS, whatever it may be. I have something. And so I could then serve as the head person for that work group. Now, let's say that I am a firefighter in terms of rank, then I would need somebody to be in charge of me. And so who would that be, right? Maybe it is a specific, officer who's interested in health and fitness and ready to manage that program. Maybe it's the health and safety division, like, and here I fall under the training division. And so you kind of designate whatever umbrella you want them to fall under. And then there is a officer who is in charge of that, right? And then there is a head person, although might not be ranked, has the expertise, the knowledge to help guide that. And then you have everybody else in terms of however many people make up your team. Maybe it's only 3, maybe it's just you, the one person, right? And starting in that model. But then somebody is in charge, which is helpful. Not to say that obviously the whole group isn't contributing with ideas and having input, very much so, and I think is needed. But I do think that it's helpful to have some guidance or some vision that maybe one person has. Again, maybe they only have a single credential, but that's okay. There still needs to be a main point of contact. And if that person doesn't have any rank, then they also have the help of an officer who has been, tasked with this to kind of fall under their purview.
I like it because I hear so many times someone will come up to me, say at a conference, and they'll be like, I love fitness. I'm so passionate about fitness and I just can't get anything going at my department. Well, you can be the person to be in charge of it. And I think that's a great suggestion from Vanessa to find a ranking officer to sort of be in charge of you and start there. I like that a lot. Now, let's imagine we now have our work group, or some places call it a fitness committee. We have our lead person, say they're a peer trainer, and then we have our supervisor, maybe it's the battalion chief or the training and safety chief. And we have a few others that are interested and on the committee. What types, in addition to potentially those credentials of, IAFF or NSCA, TSAC facilitator, let's go pie in the sky. Everyone already has that credential. But we feel like we need more education. We feel like we need more oomph behind what we're doing. What types of courses would you have that department look for?
If let's say everybody already has like a basic credential. Like
let's just say they have their peer trainer or TSAC or personal
like
trainer. Yeah.
Ooh, that's a solid question, Lizzie.
I think there's a lot of right answers too.
I think and that's what I was going to say. I think it depends in the direction they are currently headed. And so with that in mind, let's say that they're tackling this specifically from the fitness realm. So all of this is going to be fitness associated. We would now want to start to diversify, I think, our certifications credentials based on what we like as individual people within the group, and also that there presents different things for, the members of the department to have access to. So maybe I want to go to a running technique certification because I am that marathoner, that ultra marathoner, and I want to help people do that. Whereas I have somebody else in my group who may be a yoga enthusiast, and maybe they go get their 200-hour cert or something along those lines. Something that I would emphasize prior to those, if I all have to get one cert, right, it would be some certification associated with injury risk management, essentially. And I don't mean like sitting in a stats class where they talk about risk management, but I'm talking about human movement. Because even though you have your PT, even though you have your, and like not by physical therapy, but personal trainer, even though you have your peer fitness trainer through the IFF, even though you have your CSCS included, TSAC, all of the above, right? Or the NASM, so on and so forth. None of those. Now, I'm not entirely sure about the new IFF model, whether or not they have a required coaching portion that associates human movement. But like, I know for a fact that our like TSAC or CSCS, 99% of personal training certifications out there you don't actually have to be able to tell somebody how to improve based on a human being that's put there in front of you.
Yeah. So some sort of a hands-on ability to evaluate and correct and coach. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, very much so. Because like I said, like all movement kind of falls into some main movement patterns. And so that's why I spend so much time on that. And that if you can look at movement, again, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about on the fire ground, in the gym, or picking up my kid after school, like the act of physically picking something up, it all comes back down to the same movement patterns. And so if I can identify, well, first I have to be able to identify them, right? Then after I identify them, I need to be able to kind of run that through my background knowledge of like biomechanics, essentially how human body moves, the physics of the human body. And then I have to be able to spit out coaching cues that make sense to that specific person, which requires trial and error. Now,
Yes.
This is honed through practice, just like anything on the fire ground, right? Intentional practice proves progress. And so, but I need to have some direction in order to do that. And so something along those lines. A few years ago, I went to the Ready States Movement 102 cert, Movement 101 and Movement 102 cert, back in San Francisco. And that was a great class. It was filled with, there were strength coaches in there. There was physical therapists. There were occupational therapists. There were yoga instructors. There were like Zoom instructors, like literally everybody who dealt with human movement. And we all looked at movement. We did different assessments in terms of movement assessments and like, is it passive, active, range of motion, things like that. It might be a little in depth for quite a few people, depending on what their background credential is. But again, if we're starting with everybody has some kind of like national cert, then I think you need to look specifically at how to teach movement next, because it's going to give you the most bang for your buck in terms of helping people.
I agree. And as you were talking, I was almost thinking even some sort of an internship, if you could get one with a good coach, like, I don't know, 10 hours a week internship where you got to watch them coach and then do a little like see one, do one, teach one situation. I think that might be really helpful.
That could be extremely helpful. Now you run into the concern about like time constraints, right? Especially if we're talking about this. These are people who are full-time firefighters and now serving in that capacity as a, peer fitness trainer. Now on top of that, an internship, like ideal, but not, I don't think feasible in real life versus, a few weekend certs here and there. And then practicing it. You have to actually therefore go and practice what you're doing or what you've learned in terms of how do you start fixing people's movement and helping them through that. That's where it starts.
Yeah, it goes back to that two things can be true. And the best option is to have someone that does this for a living, doing it for your people. Again, two things can be true. Okay, so we've got our leader of the work group. We've got our officer to sort of give it teeth. We've got our certified people. They've taken maybe a couple, 2-3 extra classes in their area of interest. Now what? Like, how do we really get legs under this, Vanessa?
Oh, I'm still working through that.
Right. And you like best case scenario, we're talking like this department has peer trainers only.
Yeah. I'm still working through that. Now, I do think a lot of the value that is brought by having, peer fitness trainers, we call it here work groups simply because I put them through, and we have work groups for everything, like minimal equipment, all the things. And also I didn't put them through the, I don't know if it's trademarked or not, peer fitness trainer. And so we just call it a work group. But I think a huge value that the work group brings, and I make it very clear to them, and then also to, those above me in terms of the huge values that they are there in the stations every single day. Even though it is just amongst their shift, amongst their crews, like being there regularly makes a difference because it's a person who has some knowledge. Again, they don't have to have the most, they just have to have a little bit more than the person asking the question about like, hey, does it really matter if I eat sweet potatoes versus white potatoes? Like, but and maybe they know the answer to that and maybe they don't, but it's at least somebody they can direct the question to. And then my work group is like, hey, if you don't know the answer, tell them you don't know the answer. Upfront, honest, and then go find out, ask, right? And then go back and give them the answer. And it just brings up different discussions that otherwise might not exist in, the stations on their own. So in our specific case, when our fitness benchmarks roll around, a lot of the rumor mill hearsay of like, hey, if you don't pass, this is what happens to you. Now, all of that's outlined in policy, but whether or not people go in and read them is another thing. But people forget also, there's a million things that our firefighters need to know. This as to why this specific benchmark was created is not one that's going to help them in their every single day life. And so having somebody in station who is knowledgeable on that, because we've gone through it, we've educated on it. And then I'm also like, as things are coming up, reminding them of, hey, these things are going to come up. You might be hearing these conversations in the station, like, oh, this consumption drill was just pulled out of Vanessa's ass. She just threw all of these things together. There's no why are we even doing these? Why does that standard exist? Well, it turns out it's been studied for over a decade, so on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. And it can help squash rumors in that sense. It can help also build some consistency within people's behaviors around health and performance. If I have somebody who's regularly working out at the station, even if they're not, the quote unquote most influential in the sense that they're not a CEO, that helps because at least one person is working out at the station and then they get to, pull another person in. And so that's a huge value, even if you almost do nothing else, but have them exist among the stations. And then people ask them questions simply because they're there.
I think I've said this before. I can give my phone number, email, social media contact, pull a box alarm. They know they can get a hold of me and it'll be radio silence. And I walk in the station and there's 35 questions about stuff they should have asked me a month ago.
Oh my gosh. Yes, very much so. That is that happens, I think, everywhere with all the things. And it's not only health and fitness, but it's oh, I need to talk to that person, about, I need to talk to that person about getting a new shirt.
Yeah.
And I just keep putting it off. And you see them in the hallway and you're like, oh, by the way, I need a new shirt.
Exactly.
Or whatever it may be. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's just out of sight, out of mind is real. And so having people in the station keeps it maybe not front of mind, but it's at least not out of sight.
Oh, so I like that.
It's, I think, and I tell them, I'm this is the huge benefit because people will also ask you questions that they might not ask me, simply because either A, they don't see me, or B, sometimes people come up and they're like, hey, this might be a stupid question, but, and I'm like, I'm not saying most health and fitness questions are, but there are stupid questions that exist just out in the world. However, when it comes to health and fitness, or health and performance, there really aren't any stupid questions other than is exercise good for you? The glaring answer is yes, because we all know that, right? Now, the nuances of those, there's really no stupid question. But they sometimes are like afraid to ask me some things that seem really simple, which one, I'm always working to like, please ask me all the things. But two, they see you every day on shift, you're on the crew. They're going to be more comfortable asking you something about health and fitness than potentially me.
Bingo. I love it. Well, is there anything that I should have asked you about your work group or advice for those departments that can't have a Vanessa? Anything that you were hoping to discuss that I just blew it?
I'm trying to think. I mean, if you can't have an outside professional, I do think you can still have a program.
Yeah.
I think that can be done in a couple different ways. There are many people in your community who care about helping the fire department. And that's not to say that, every, I'm going to use the word vendor for lack of a better word, out there is worthwhile or even definitely not culturally competent. Right. But they are willing to help. And so even if that's like once a quarter training, maybe this quarter I have a physical therapist willing to do a presentation or a hands-on clinic about some different like techniques where I'm like, hey, we have quite a few people with like plantar fasciitis. Obviously, the best move would be to go see a physical therapist. But what are some common educational points that you could talk about once a quarter to have, one day somebody do that? One day, and it's a 1 hour, presentation. Now, is everybody going to do that for like out of the goodness of their heart? No. But there will be some out there who will do it if you literally have $0 to spend. And so I think that's something to keep in mind. That can be a part of your program. Now, if you do have some peer fitness trainers, we've kind of already walked through that model. And I think the goal is always trying to improve upon whatever your current model is.
Yeah. And you said something, I love it. You said your program. And I just want to remind everybody that the Wellness and Fitness Initiative is an initiative. It is not a program. It is potentially part of your program. But I have a lot of departments that say, yeah, we have a wellness program. We have the WFI. And I'm like, but okay. So I think that's great advice. Vanessa, you're absolutely right. Some people will do an occasional lecture out of the goodness of their heart, and some people will want to be paid. And I think that both of those things are okay as long as you're getting great products. I think it's great. I feel really bad right now.
Why?
I do not remember your dog situation.
Oh my gosh, I have too many. That's why.
Okay. Did you get more since you moved?
No. No, we actually, so we technically have 4. One of my 4 currently lives with my mom.
Okay.
Because she was down to 1 dog. And so we lived with her while my house was being built.
Okay.
And so at one point we had 6 dogs in my mom's house. One of them, it didn't die, but it went to, we're like an ancestral dog family in the sense that so my aunt's dog died and she had to, one of her dogs died and she wanted a new dog, but didn't want to go get a puppy and try and, I just moved the thing, want to go get a puppy and find a dog that didn't get along with her dog or whatever. And my mom's dog had gotten along with her dogs plenty, and they have some acreage out there, and he's he's some kind of rat terrier mix that likes to find all the vermin and bring them to the house, which they love because they don't want any rats. And so one of my mom's dogs went there. Long story.
Holy
not
shit,
so short.
Your aunt got a used dog.
Yeah, my aunt got a used dog. And so then we were at my mom's house with 5 dogs, 4 of those being ours and then 1 of those being hers. And then when we were ready to move, we we're okay, well, we don't want Cooper's my mom's dog. I was we don't want Cooper to be alone. And so we need to leave a dog. And so we decided to leave our smallest dog, who is also an escape artist,
Oh, God.
because we have, like, on our acreage, we do have a dog run that we call it, that's fenced in. But he, like, Max is quick. He will run out the door super fast. And some, like, in neighborhoods, it's fine. But on the road, if he made it to the road that our property is on, people drive down that road super fast. And
Oh, no.
he's been hit by a car once. This dog has lived through, like, he's been maced. He weighs 7 pounds. He's been maced by a mailman. He has been hit by an SUV. Hey, he has escaped a burning building. My husband's house caught on fire on Thanksgiving one year, and he literally ran out of it. And then my husband's house is, if he doesn't live with me, his childhood home. I should say that.
Got it.
Okay. And so anyways, this dog has, like, lived his 7 cat lives already. So I'm like, you should stay with mom and, like, just, live your best life, because he's already 13. And dude, he is doing, I think my children stressed him out, because he's doing better than he's done in, like, the last 6 years.
Oh,
He
my
looks
God.
like he's just, like, not a kid dog, and that's fine, right? So he lives with my mom, and now, so we have 3, but we almost got a puppy recently, but we decided against it, which is impressive, because we've never said no to a dog. Why
Wow.
we have 4.
So my listeners, if you're in the market for a used dog, Vanessa has got used dogs.
Apparently, yeah, but only if they're going to good homes, right?
Right.
With all the love.
Okay.
But yeah, so I have too many dogs. That's why you don't remember.
Okay. All right. You're going to have to, I'll send you pictures of the medals as soon as we get done with the call, and you just send me
I'll
pictures
send
of
you
the dogs.
Feels fair.
All right. I'm going to put all of your contact information in the show notes. I'm probably going to remind people about the manifesto, if that's okay.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
The Vanessa manifesto. And yeah, I don't think I'm going to see you this summer, but we'll have to schedule a time when we can hang out.
No, you're not going to TSEC this year.
No, I don't think I'm going to tactical.
That makes me so sad. Yeah, we'll have to find. You're not that far. I mean, you're far in that you're in another state, but at least Oklahoma's close.
It's closer than Chicago.
Yeah, much closer.
Let's put it that way. All right, we'll work out some details, my friend. Thank you so much for your time, and I do think that we can probably drop the mic. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. It's VP and AZ, and we are officially out. Mic drop.